The moon was full the night Lysandra died. She stood on the high balcony of the North Tower, her white nightgown moving in the wind. Below her, the kingdom slept. The forest stretched dark and endless to the mountains. She was crying. She had been crying for a long time. Kaelin stood in the doorway behind her. He did not come closer. He had learned over the years that coming closer only made things worse. "Come inside," he said quietly. "It's cold." She didn't turn around. "When they find me," she said, "promise me one thing." Something in her voice made his chest go tight. He stepped forward then, slow, the way you move toward a frightened animal. "Tell them what?" he asked. "The truth," she said. He reached for her. His hand was almost on her shoulder. The old stone of the balcony rail had been cracked for years. Everyone knew it. No one had fixed it. It gave way beneath her weight, with a sound like a branch breaking. She went over the edge before he could close his fingers around anything but air. As she fell, she looked up at him. Her face was almost peaceful. "They will never believe you anyway," she said, and then she was gone. 3 years later. Chapter 1. I have packed my entire life into one trunk, and it still isn't full. That is the thought I keep returning to as the carriage climbs the mountain road toward Highmore. One trunk. 31 years of living, and I could fit all of it into a box a child could sit on. A few dresses. My mother's sewing kit. 3 books I have read so many times I could recite them. A pressed flower from a garden that no longer exists. My name is Arya. In 2 days I will marry Alpha Kaelin of the Northern Reach, the man they call the Widowmaker, the man everyone in 3 kingdoms believes murdered his own wife. I should be afraid. I keep waiting to be afraid. Instead, I am tired, and I am thinking about my trunk. My father arranged the marriage. He owed Kaelin a debt. Money, of course. It is always money. And when the debt came due and the coffers were empty, he offered the only thing he had left that was worth anything. Me. Not because I am beautiful, though I am told I am pleasant enough to look at. Not because I am clever, though I am cleverer than my sisters, which no one has ever thanked me for. He offered me because I am useful, because I run the household and balance the accounts and remember everyone's birthdays and know which creditor can be put off another month. Because I am the one who gets things done. "You'll manage him," my father said the night he told me. He poured himself a drink as he said it, and he did not look at me, and he said it like a compliment. "You manage everything." I did not say what I was thinking. What I was thinking was this. Someday I would like to be the thing that is managed, instead of the one doing the managing. Someday I would like to be chosen because someone wanted me, and not because I was the convenient solution to a problem. But I am 31 and unmarried and the eldest of 4 daughters, and a girl learns to swallow thoughts like that. They go down hard, but they go down. So I said yes. I said yes because it solved my father's problem. I said yes because that is what I do. And I packed my one trunk, and I did not let my sisters see me cry, because if I had cried they would have felt guilty, and then I would have had to comfort them, and I was so tired of comforting people. The carriage turns a final bend, and Highmore rises out of the mist. It is not what I expected. I expected something cruel, a fortress of black stone, iron spikes, the architecture of a man who kills. Instead, the castle is old and gray and softened by ivy, with tall windows that catch the last of the daylight and throw it back gold. There are gardens, overgrown but once carefully made. You can see the bones of them under the weeds, the shape of paths and beds laid out by someone who knew what they were doing. There is a sense, looking at it, of a place that someone loved very much and then simply stopped tending, a house in mourning for itself. A woman is waiting at the gate. She is perhaps 60, with iron gray hair pinned tight and the straight back of someone who has run a household for decades. She does not smile. She looks at me the way you look at weather you are not sure you trust. "Lady Aria," she says. "I'm Mara, the housekeeper. I'll show you to your rooms." "Thank you," I say, climbing down. "And the Alpha? Will I meet him this evening?" Something flickers across Mara's face. The Alpha keeps his own hours. It is not an answer. I am good at noticing when something is not an answer. I have spent my whole life listening to people not quite answer, and Mara has just done it, smoothly, the way you do a thing you have done many times before. She leads me through the gate, across a courtyard into the castle. It is warmer inside than I expected and cleaner and quieter. Too quiet. The few servants we pass lower their eyes and hurry on, as if I am a ghost, or as if they are. There is a hush over this place like the hush in a house where someone is sick, or grieving, or both. How many staff are there? I ask. 11 now, Mara says. There were 40 once. What happened to the others? They left. She says it flatly, and I understand she means they left because of the rumors. They left because no one wants to serve a man who threw his wife off a tower, no matter how good the wages. We climb a wide staircase. On the second floor, Mara leads me down a long hall lined with doors, and then I notice it. One door, near the end, is different from the others, heavier, and there is a lock on it, a real lock, new brass against dark wood, bright as a coin in all that dimness. I slow without meaning to. What's that room? Mara doesn't even look at it. She keeps her eyes fixed straight ahead, and I notice that too. She has trained herself not to look. That's nothing for you to worry about, my lady. Your rooms are this way. She steers me past it with a hand at my elbow. But I have already filed it away. A new lock on an old door in a house full of unlocked ones. Someone wanted to keep something in. Or out. I notice things. It is the one thing I have that no one can take from me. My rooms are lovely, which surprises me. Someone has put fresh flowers on the table. Autumn flowers, the last of the season, arranged without much skill but with evident care. Someone has aired the bedding and laid a fire in the grate. Someone has left a tray of bread and cheese and a pot of tea still warm with a small dish of honey beside it. Did you do this? I ask Mara. No, my lady. She pauses at the door. A strange expression crosses her face. Not quite a smile, but its distant relative. The Alpha asked what you might want after a long journey. I told him I had no idea, as I'd never met you. He stood there a while, thinking. He does that. Stands and thinks until you wonder if he's forgotten you're there, and then he said to put out something simple. Bread, tea, nothing that demands anything of a tired person. I look at the tray. At the bread, the simple tea, the honey set out in case I wanted sweetness but not insisted upon. Nothing that demands anything of a tired person. It is the most considerate thing anyone has done for me in years, and the man who did it has not even shown me his face. Good night, my lady, Mara says, and leaves me alone. I do not sleep well, and once near midnight I hear footsteps in the hall, slow, heavy, the walk of a man going somewhere he goes every night. They pass my door and stop somewhere down the corridor. I hear the soft click of a lock turning. I hear a door open and close. And then, faint through the walls, I hear something I do not expect from a monster. I sit up and hold my breath to be sure I am not imagining it. I hear a man talking quietly, to no one, in a room that has been locked for 3 years. I cannot make out the words. Only the low murmur of his voice, rising and falling, the cadence of someone telling another person about their day. The voice of a man speaking to someone he loves in a room where there is no one to hear. It goes on a long time, then it stops. The lock turns again, and the footsteps go back down the hall, slower now, as if whatever he carried into that room he is carrying back out, only heavier. The monster of the north talks to a locked room every night, in a voice like a hand laid against a cheek. I do not know what that means, but I know it means something, and I know the truth of this house is not the simple, ugly story the world believes. Chapter 2. I meet him the next morning, and I almost walk past him. He is in the garden when I come down. He is kneeling in the dirt among the overgrown rose beds, his sleeves pushed up, dark hair falling across his face. For a moment I take him for a gardener. There is dirt on his hands and a smudge of it on his jaw. He is frowning at a tangle of dead canes with the absorbed, slightly hopeless expression of a man losing a long argument with a plant. Then he looks up, and I know because of how the air changes. But it is not that exactly, it is his eyes. They are gray and tired, the gray of the castle itself. They look at me as if he is reading the last page of a book he already knows the ending of. "Lady Arya," he says. He rises, brushing dirt from his hands, though it does little good. He is tall, broad through the shoulders, with the kind of face that would be handsome if it remembered how. "I'm Kaelin. I apologize for not greeting you last night. I thought you might prefer rest to ceremony." "I did," I say. "Thank you for the tea." Something shifts in his expression, surprise, quickly hidden like a hand closing over a coin, as if he is not used to being noticed back and does not quite know what to do with it. "You were gardening," I say. He glances down at the roses as if he has forgotten them. "These were my mother's. They've gone wild. I'm trying to bring them back. I'm not very good at it. I read a book about pruning. I've cut things I shouldn't have and left things I should have cut." A pause, half to himself. "Most things I try to bring back, I'm not very good at." We stand there in the ruined garden, the two of us who are going to be married tomorrow, and neither of us pretends it is anything but what it is. "You don't have to marry me," he says at last. He does not look at me when he says it. He looks at the roses. "I sent word to your father this morning. The debt is forgiven, regardless of what you decide. If you want to go home, the carriage is yours. You can leave within the hour." I stare at him. I have spent 2 days bracing for a monster. Instead, I am being offered the one thing I did not dare to want, a way out, freely given. "You'd let me leave?" "Of course." He frowns as if the question genuinely confuses him. "You're a person, not a coin to settle a debt with." No one has ever made me feel less like a coin than this man everyone says is a murderer. "Why don't you defend yourself?" The question is out before I can stop it. "Against the rumors. Everyone thinks you killed her. You could deny it. You never do. Why?" For a long moment he says nothing. The wind moves through the dead roses, and a few brown petals let go and drift down. "Because some truths," he says, "cost more to tell than the lie costs to carry." Then he picks up his shears and turns back to the roses, and I understand the conversation is over, but I have filed it away. He did not say he was innocent. He also did not say he was guilty. He said the truth costs too much, and a man does not say that about a death he caused by accident, or one he is glad of. He says it about a death he is protecting someone from. "I'll stay," I tell him, "for now." He nods once and goes back to his roses. I marry him the next day. There are no guests. When he takes my hand to make the vows, his fingers are cold, and there is still dirt in the creases of his knuckles, and I find absurdly that this steadies me. A man who comes to his own wedding with garden dirt on his hands is not performing. He is simply living his life, and has made a small space.
She thanked me for the tea. "I have been turning it over all morning, the way you turn over a stone you found on a path. Not because it is valuable, but because it is the wrong shape for the path it was on. People do not thank me for things. People have not thanked me for anything in 3 years. They take what I give and they watch my hands while they do it, as if I might change my mind and strike them. She watched my hands too, but not for that. She watched them the way she watches everything, taking it in, filing it away, missing nothing. I saw her notice the dirt under my nails and decide something about me from it. I could not tell what. I did not want a wife. I want to be very clear with myself about that. Because it would be easy, dangerous, to let this become something. I agreed to her father's offer because refusing would have meant explaining why, and I am tired of explaining nothing in a way that satisfies no one. I meant to send her home. I had the carriage kept ready. I told her she could go. She stayed. The sensible thing was to send her home before she became someone I could lose. The carriage stood ready. I had only to say the word. I have never been sure, since whether keeping silent was the bravest thing I have done, or only the most afraid. I do not know what to do with that, so I do what I always do. I go back to the roses. They were my mother's, and my mother left, and the roses stayed, which is more than most things manage. I have been trying to bring them back for 3 years, and I am not good at it. But they have not died yet, and some days that feels like the only thing in my life I have not entirely ruined. That night I go to the room, the way I go every night. I sit in the chair by the window where she used to sit. I tell her about the day. I tell her there is a wife now, a quiet one, a watcher, and that I will not let it become anything. Because everything becomes something and then it ends, and I am too tired to be left again. People think I come here out of love or guilt, and they are not wrong, but they are not right either. The truth is simpler and worse. I come here because this room is the one place in the world where no one can leave me. She is already gone. There is nothing left to lose in this room. I can speak freely here, be tender here, want things here, because the worst has already happened and cannot happen twice. Out there in the daylight, everyone is still in the process of leaving. Some slowly, some without knowing it yet, but all of them, eventually, the way my mother left and my father left and the servants left and the world left in a single morning. In here, the leaving is finished. That is what I mistake for peace. The room does not answer. It never does. That is, in its way, the most restful conversation in my life. Chapter 2. I told myself the sugar bowl was nothing. A small thing, a trade that cost me nothing. I have gotten very good over the years at telling myself that the things I do for people cost me nothing. Because if they cost me something, then losing the people would cost me something, and I cannot afford to be cost anything else. I am already overdrawn, but I have started watching for her in the mornings. That is the truth I will not say in the room at night, even to someone who cannot hear. I have started coming down to breakfast at the hour she comes down, where before I ate alone or not at all. I have started leaving the library lamp lit. I tell myself it is to save the oil. There is no sense in which leaving a lamp burning saves oil. I know this. I leave it lit anyway. She moved to the middle of the table. After I took the chair away, after I carried the portrait up 3 flights to the attic myself, in the dark, so no servant would talk, she came down, and she saw, and she did not say a word, and she sat near the middle, near me. And something in my chest did a thing it has not done in so long I did not recognize it at first. I had to sit very still until it passed. It did not entirely pass. I do these things because I do not know how to say the words. I used to know. I made speeches once, beautiful ones, I thought, and every speech became something that could be turned around and held against me later, in the dark, in a frightened voice. You said you'd never tire of me. So why did you look at her? Why did you ride out? Why do you breathe in a world that has other women in it? I learned that words in the wrong hands are not gifts. They are evidence. So I stopped using them. I learned a quieter language. You cannot weaponize a moved chair. There is nothing in it to grab and pull. I am not going to let this become anything. I say it to myself again, at the table, watching her butter her bread in the good light. I say it the way you say a prayer you have stopped believing in, out of habit, because the alternative is silence, and silence is where the wanting lives.
Chapter 3. The first thing I learn about my husband is that he does not sleep, and the second is that I am not supposed to know it. I learn it because on my 3rd night at Highmore I cannot sleep either, and I go down to the kitchen for warm milk, the way my mother taught me, and I find him at the long table in the dark, a single candle burning, a ledger open in front of him that he is not reading. He is just sitting, looking at nothing. A man alone in his own house at the bottom of the night. He stands the moment he sees me, the way a man stands when he's been caught. Forgive me, I'll go. It's your kitchen, I say. I'm the one trespassing. I came down for milk. Sit, please, I'll only be a moment. He sits, but he is braced, ready to flee. I heat the milk, and because the silence is enormous and I have never been able to leave an enormous silence alone, I bring 2 cups to the table and set one in front of him. I didn't ask for, he begins. I know, you looked cold. I sit across from him. You don't have to drink it. He looks at the cup for a long moment. Then he drinks it. We sit in the dark, the two of us, drinking warm milk like children, and it is the strangest and least lonely hour I have spent in years. You don't sleep, I say. It isn't a question. No. Since when? He turns the cup in his hands. Since I stopped being able to. It is not an answer, but it is more honest than an answer, and I let it be enough. When I rise to go, he says very quietly to the table more than to me, "Thank you, Arya." And the way he says my name, like a word in a language he is afraid he is mispronouncing, follows me all the way back up the stairs. I begin to understand the shape of the house. There is a chair at the head of the long table that no one sits in. There is a portrait in the great hall, large, gilt-framed, covered with a gray cloth, that no one uncovers and everyone walks past with lowered eyes. When the servants speak of her, and they do, in whispers and corners, they speak the way you speak of a saint. The first Luna, Lady Lysandra. She was so beautiful, so kind. She had a word for everyone. She loved this place, and the Alpha so. And look what he did to her. I am not living in a castle. I am living in a shrine. And I have married the man everyone believes desecrated it. I decide to make myself useful, because it is the only thing I know how to do, and because a house this sad needs someone to open the windows. I take over the accounts. They are a disaster, 3 years of a grieving man's neglect. And one afternoon I bring the ledgers to Kaelin's study to ask about a discrepancy. He answers my questions precisely, and then, as I gather the books to go, he says, "You take your tea without sugar." I stop. Yes, how did you? You reach for the bowl every morning, out of habit, I think. And then you stop your own hand, and there's a moment where you look as if you've been caught wanting something you shouldn't. He says it plainly, without weight, as if reporting the weather. I had Mara move the bowl down the table. You won't have to stop your hand anymore. You won't even notice it's gone. That's the point. I do not know what to say. I have lived 31 years, and no one has ever watched me closely enough to see the small private war I wage with a sugar bowl, let alone end it for me without being asked. Why would you do that? I finally manage. He looks genuinely puzzled by the question. Because it cost me nothing, and it was costing you something. He turns back to his work. It seemed an easy trade. I carry the ledgers out, and I do not trust myself to speak, and I think, Oh, this is dangerous. This man is going to be very dangerous to me. The library is the next thing. I read at night. I have always read at night to keep the dark company. And I have read my 3 books to pieces. I have not complained. I would never complain. I am the kind of person who has trained herself out of asking for things. But 2 days after the sugar bowl, I find a door I had thought was locked standing open at the end of a corridor, a lamp lit inside, and beyond it a library. Dusty, long shut, but a library. Walls of books, more books than I have seen in my life. I do not ask whether I am allowed. I take 2. I read until dawn. The next morning, the 2 books I left on the side table by the window have been moved back to the shelf, and a 3rd has been set out in their place. A book of northern folk tales, the kind of thing you read for comfort and not improvement. There is no note. There is never a note. But the message is clear as speech. I saw which corner you chose. The light is good there in the afternoon. Here is something gentle for you. I said nothing, and I never will, and you never have to thank me. I sit down in the good light corner, and I read the folk tales, and I cry. A little, for no reason I could explain to anyone. The thing that undoes me happens at breakfast, a week in. I come down and stop in the doorway, because the great hall is different. The gray cloth is gone from the portrait. The portrait is gone, too. Just gone, the wall where it hung now only a wall. And the chair at the head of the table, the empty chair, the one no one sat in, has been removed. There is no head to the table anymore. Only a long table where 2 people might sit anywhere they like. I stand there with my hand at my mouth. Kaelin is already at the table, a ledger open in front of him. And he does not look up. And I understand that he is not looking up on purpose. that he has arranged it so I do not have to be seen seeing it. I do not say anything. I do not sit in my old place far down the table. I sit near the middle, near him. The light's better here, I say, which is not why, and we both know it is not why. It is, he agrees, and turns a page, and that is all. But his shoulders have come down from around his ears, just slightly, the way a man relaxes when something he was bracing for turns out. Chapter 4. The storm comes down off the mountain on a Tuesday and does not leave for 3 days. The first night the wind is so loud the whole castle groans like a ship. The second night the snow has buried the lower windows and the 11 servants have gone to their own quarters, and it is only Kaelin and me and the great fire in the hall and the storm trying to get in. I find him standing at the tall window watching it come down, and for once he does not flinch when I join him. Will the village be all right? I ask. I have been worrying about it. I worry about things. It is what I am for. The headman knows storms. They'll bring the animals in and bank the fires and wait. He pauses. I'll ride down when it breaks. Take grain if they've run short. They always tell me they haven't. They always have. They're proud. They're afraid of me, he says, without self-pity, as a simple fact. It comes to the same thing mostly. A proud man and a frightened one both lie about needing help. I look at him sideways. Which are you? He almost smiles. It is the closest I have seen him come. Both, I expect. We end up by the fire. The storm has made the world small, just this one warm room, and it loosens something in both of us. I tell him about my sisters, about being the eldest, about the particular loneliness of being the one everyone leans on and no one holds up. I do not mean to say so much. He listens the way he does everything, completely without interrupting, his whole gray attention on me like a hand. When I finish, he is quiet a while. You said you remember everyone's birthdays, he says. Who remembers yours? I open my mouth. I close it. The honest answer is no one. That I send the gifts and bake the cakes and mark the calendar, and that my own birthday passes most years without comment, and that I stopped minding long ago because minding was useless. That's what I thought, he says gently, reading the silence. He does not make it a tragedy. He just sets another log on the fire, and the matter sits there between us, named, which is somehow worth more than any comfort he could have offered. On the third night the fire is low and we are both half asleep in our chairs, and I wake to find he has taken off his own coat and laid it over me. He is sitting in his shirt sleeves in the cold, watching the fire, keeping it fed so I will not wake up chilled. He does not know I'm awake. I keep my eyes nearly closed and I watch the most feared man in 3 kingdoms tend a fire through the night so that his wife, his accounts keeper, his obligation, his coin will stay warm. I think, lying there under his coat, I am in terrible trouble. When the storm breaks, he rides down to the village, and I go with him, because I will not be left behind to worry. The snow is blinding white, and the village is small, and the people come out to see their alpha with the careful blank faces of people who have decided in advance not to show fear. There is an old woman at the edge of the square. She is the only one who does not look afraid. She looks furious. She stares at Kaelin with open hatred, and as we pass she says not quietly, not caring who hears. Murderer! She was a saint and you broke her like a doll. The square goes silent. Every servant, every villager, waiting to see what the monster does. Kaelin stops his horse. He looks at the old woman for a long moment, and then he does the thing I will never forget. He inclines his head to her respectfully and says, I know you loved her. She was easy to love. And he rides on, leaving the woman with her mouth open and her hatred suddenly with nowhere to go. It is not the answer of a guilty man. It is also not the answer of an innocent one. An innocent man defends himself. This man agreed with her. He let her keep her hatred because taking it from her would have meant taking Lysandra from her too. I file it away, this contradiction, with all the rest. The questions are stacking up like the snow, and not one of them is melting. That night I ask Mara directly because I cannot stand it anymore. Did he do it? Mara goes very still. Then she sits down heavily, as if I have let her put down something she has carried a long time. No, she says. He didn't. Then why does the whole world? Because he won't say he didn't. He stood in front of the magistrate, my lady, and said nothing, nothing at all. She looks at her hands. I've asked myself 1,000 times what truth could be so terrible that a good man would rather be called a murderer than tell it. I've never found an answer I could bear. A truth worse than murder. I lie awake turning the words over. What is worse than murder to a man like Kalen? And I think I begin to see the shape of it in the dark. And the shape is so sad that I understand why he would carry it alone, I think. He is protecting her. He loved her so much that even now, even after she died and left him to the wolves, he is protecting the way the world remembers her. I am sure of it. I am so sure of it that I stop asking questions for a while. And being sure is such a relief after weeks of turning the question over that I let myself stop asking it for a while. It is so much easier to hold a sad answer than to keep wondering at a frightening one. Chapter 5. I find the...
She came with me to the village. She did not have to. She has begun doing things she does not have to do, and each one is a small catastrophe I do not know how to survive. The old woman called me a murderer in the square. I've grown used to that. It lands on me now like rain, unremarkable. But Arya, I felt her go rigid beside me, felt the anger come off her like heat. She wanted to defend me, to a stranger, in the snow. No one has wanted to defend me in 3 years, and this woman, who has known me a handful of weeks, sat on her horse vibrating with the need to do it. And I had to ride on quickly before I did something foolish, like let her see my face. That night I went to the room, as I always do. I sat in the chair, and for the first time in 3 years I could not think of what to say. The day had been full. The storm, the ride, the woman in the square, the way Arya looked at me when I bowed my head to the old woman's hatred. But none of it was a thing I could bring into that room. It belonged to the daylight. It belonged to her. I sat in the dark with the dead, and I had nothing to tell them, because for the first time in 3 years I had spent the day among the living. I left earlier than usual. I told myself it meant nothing, it meant something, and it frightens me, this meaning. Because there is a thing under the thing, a truth I have never said aloud to anyone, living or dead. It is not only her memory I have been protecting all this time. There are letters in that room. I know they are there. I found them a year after she died, read one line, and never had the courage for the second. Those letters are the proof that would clear me in an afternoon, and I have never used them. I tell myself it is mercy, that I am sparing a sick woman's memory. That is true. But it is not all of it. The rest is this. For 12 years I believed that if I just loved her correctly, she would get better. The letters prove she never would have. They prove I spent the best decade of my life pouring everything I had into a cup with a hole in the bottom and calling it devotion and being proud of how much I poured. If the world reads them, I am not a grieving husband any more. I am a fool who could not see what was in front of him until it went over a balcony rail. And God help me. I would rather be a murderer than a fool. A murderer at least did something. Being hated is bearable. Being pitied is not. The letters were upstairs. I could end it in an afternoon, one reading, and they would call me wronged instead of guilty. I could never decide which I feared more. Staying their monster or becoming their fool. That is the worst of me. I have buried it deeper than her. And I can feel the way you feel a storm coming down the mountain before you see it, that this watchful woman is going to dig it up. And that for the first time in 3 years there will be someone I do not want to lie to.
Chapter 5. I find the first letter by accident, which is the only way I find anything in this house. I have been changing the flowers in Lysandra's room. Mara stopped trying to keep me out weeks ago, and I think she is glad someone shares the weight of it. I am dusting the bookshelf when a slim volume slips and falls open, and a single folded page slides out from behind the spines. It is in a woman's hand, elegant, careful. It is not addressed to anyone. It begins. I counted the hours he was gone today. 4. I told myself I would not count, and I counted anyway. He came home and kissed my hair, and I searched his collar for another woman's scent and found none and was disappointed, because at least a real betrayal would explain this thing that lives in my chest. I sit down hard on the edge of the bed. It is Lysandra, and she is not a saint. She is something far more human and far more frightening. A woman drowning in a fear that has no bottom. I read it twice. Then I put it back exactly where it was, my hands shaking, because I understand that I have found the edge of the thing everyone has been hiding, and I am not ready for the middle of it. Stage 1. A single page. It does not answer the question of how she died. It makes the question larger. Because a woman this afraid is not a woman someone needs to murder. She is a woman who might do anything at all. I do not tell Kaylin I found it. I am not proud of that. But I am beginning to love him, and I am afraid of what the truth might be, and there is a coward's logic that says, if I do not look, it cannot hurt us. It is around this time that the new suspicion takes hold. It starts with the room. He still goes to it every night. After the storm, after the coat, after the warm milk in the dark, after all of it, he still rises near midnight and walks down the hall and turns the brass lock and talks to her for an hour in that low, tender voice. And I lie in my bed and listen to my husband speak more words to a dead woman through a wall than he has ever spoken to me to my face, and the certainty arrives all at once. He is still in love with her, not the saint the world worships, the real one, the frightened one in the letters. He loved her at her worst, and he loves her still, and the locked room upstairs is not a tomb. It is a marriage. And it is still going on. The thought is unbearable, and so of course I believe it completely. It explains everything. The silence, the vigil, the way he gives me sugar bowls and firelight, but never one word about his own heart. I am not his wife. I am the woman who keeps the accounts while he stays married to a ghost. I could have asked him. It would have cost me a single question. But a question has an answer, and I was not sure I could survive hearing the wrong one. It was easier to be certain of the worst than to risk being wrong about the best. And then I do something I am not proud of, even as I am doing it. I let it change how I treat him. The next morning I do not come down to the middle of the table. I take my old seat far down, where the obligation sits. When he asks me a question about the spring figures, I answer in numbers and nothing else. When he says carefully, "You're quiet today," I say, "I have a great deal to do." And I watch the small warmth we have built go out of his face like a lamp in a draught. He does not understand what he has done, because he has not done anything. The cruelty is entirely mine, and it is the cruelty of a woman protecting herself from a wound she has decided in advance she cannot survive. It goes on for 3 days. 3 days of me being useful and cold, of him growing quieter and more careful, of the house tilting back toward the gray hush I found when I arrived. On the 3rd afternoon, he comes to find me in the study, and his face is gone to stone. He sets a folded paper on the desk beside the ledgers. It is a letter to my father. I see my own name in it, and the word "released." "I've arranged the carriage," he says. His voice is flat, courteous, terrible. "For whenever you like. You needn't keep up the accounts on my behalf any longer. I should never have let this go on. You were handed to me like a debt, and I have been behaving as though that could be undone. It can't. I won't hold you to it." He does not ask me why I have gone cold. He does not ask me anything at all. He has looked at 3 days of my silence and decided he already knows the ending, and rather than wait for it, he has reached past me and shut the door himself. Because a man left as many times as he has been would sooner hand you your coat than stand there watching you reach for it. For a moment I cannot speak. He has not raised his voice. He has not been cruel exactly, but he has taken the one thing in this house that was mine to decide whether I stay, and decided it for me, alone, in the dark of his own fear, without asking me a single question. And I am angry, with a useless kind of anger that has nowhere to go, because underneath it I know that I am the one who began this, and I cannot say so without laying bare the whole jealous shape of why. So I do not. Fine, I say, as much a coward as he is. Thank you for the carriage. And I watch the last of the warmth go out of his face, and I tell myself he has earned it, and even as I tell myself I know that he has not. On the third evening I see him in the corridor outside the locked room, his hand on the brass, and he looks at me. Just looks, with an expression I cannot read. And then he does not go in. He takes his hand off the lock and walks past it and goes down to sit alone in the cold hall, and I realize, with a lurch, that between my coldness and his cold paper on the desk, the two of us have managed in 3 days to make this house lonelier than the rumors ever did. I have done it to protect myself. I have looked at a man who has spent weeks quietly loving me with his hands, and I have decided he could not possibly mean it, because believing he meant it would mean risking the one thing I have never risked. It is so much safer to be sure he loves a ghost. A ghost cannot disappoint me. A living man can. And so, without ever once deciding to, I spend 3 days teaching the most left man in 3 kingdoms, all over again. That warmth is only the thing that comes right before the cold. I find the rest of the letters a week later. The whole bundle, tied with faded ribbon, hidden flat behind the row of books where the single page had escaped. A dozen of them. More. And reading them, my theory begins to crack. Because these are not love letters. They start as love letters and they curdle. The early ones are warm. My darling, you looked at the seamstress and I have not breathed since. Tell me it is madness. Tell me you will never tire of me. But they get worse. They get frightening. She writes about driving his friends away on purpose. She writes about the threats. I told him if he rode to the capital I would not be alive when he returned, and he stayed, and I hated myself, and I would do it again. She writes about watching herself destroy him and being unable to stop. I have made him into a ghost, she writes, in a hand grown wild. I have cut him down to almost nothing, and now I am angry at how little is left. This is not a marriage he is still inside, I think. The certainty I built beginning to give way beneath me like a cracked balcony rail. This is something he survived. This is something that happened to him. I have spent 3 days being cold to a man because I decided he loved a ghost, and the truth is the ghost is the thing he has been trying to bury for 3 years, alone, with no one to help him dig. That night I go down to the cold hall where he has taken to sitting since I turned my face from him, and I sit beside him without a word, close, the way we used to. I do not explain. I would have to confess the whole ugly shape of my fear to explain, and I am not ready. But I take his hand, there in the dark, and I feel him go still with surprise, and then slowly, disbelieving, like a man who has learned not to trust the thaw, his fingers close around mine. We sit like that a long time. It is the nearest I can come, that night, to an apology. He accepts it as though it were a feast, and then I find the last letter, and everything I thought I knew goes over the edge. Chapter 6. Chapter 6. The last letter is different. The hand is steadier, as if she had reached some terrible calm. And it is unfinished, ending mid-sentence. It is dated the night she died. I have done a terrible thing, it begins, and a worse one tonight, and I cannot undo either. I told him 9 years ago that I could not have children, that the fault was mine. It was a lie. The healer told me the truth long ago. It was never me. There is something in his bloodline. His own mother lost 3 before him, he doesn't know. And the fault, such as it is his, not mine. I let him believe it was me. I let him carry it for 9 years. I know now why I did it. As long as he believed I was the broken one, he could never set me aside for a woman who could give him sons. For who discards a wife over a fault that is his own? My barrenness was my lock on him. So I took the one thing that might have freed us both, and I hid it. And tonight I have done worse. Tonight, before the whole council, I stood up and wept and told them that my husband, the letter ends there, a line of ink trailing off the edge of the page. I sit on the floor of the dead woman's room, and the pieces come together all at once, and they do not make the picture I had built. He is not a man still in love with a ghost. He is a man who was lied to for 9 years, framed in front of a council on the last night of his wife's life, and then handed the blame for her death, and who has said nothing for 3 years to protect the memory of the woman who did all of it. But the letter stops before the worst word. Told them that my husband, what? I take the letter and I go to find him. I am done not looking. He is in the garden, of course. The light is going golden long. I read her letters, I say. He goes very still. His hands stop among the roses. He does not turn around. There were no letters, he says, quietly. A last small lie offered without hope. There were 12. The last one is unfinished, dated the night she died. Kaylin, I know it wasn't you. I know about the children, about what she let you believe, and the council. The letter stops right before she wrote what she told them. I need you to tell me the rest. Before the whole council, I told them that my husband, what? What did she say? He turns, and his face is not relief. That is what undoes me. A guilty man caught feels fear. An innocent man believed feels relief. Kaylin looks at me the way you look at someone who has walked into a burning house to pull you out, with horror and tenderness and grief that I have burned myself for his sake. You shouldn't have read those, he says. Tell me the rest. He is silent so long I think he won't. Then, that I had been unfaithful to her for years, with 3 women of the court. She named them, described things, wept in front of all of them. None of it was true. There was never anyone but her. But she was beautiful and fragile and beloved. And I was what 9 years had made of me, quiet, cold to look at. She'd driven away every friend who might have spoken for me. When she named me a monster, the whole room simply nodded, because she had spent 9 years carving me into the shape of one. Why would she do that? To bind me past escape. If the whole world believed I was a faithless monster, no other woman would have me, and no one would blame her for staying, and I could never leave. It was what she'd always done, the threats, the weeping, driving off my friends, only made permanent. She built me a prison out of everyone's belief so I could never get out. He says it without bitterness, and the lack of bitterness is the thing that breaks me. And then she went to the balcony, the way she always did when she wept, and I followed the way I always did. And she asked me to promise to tell them the truth when they found her. I thought she meant she'd finally explain. The rail had been cracked for years. I reached for her to bring her in from the cold, and the stone gave way. And the last thing she said, falling, looking up at me, was, "They will never believe you anyway." I cannot breathe. And she was right, he says. She knew, even falling, exactly what she was leaving me. A wife dead beneath her husband's balcony the same night she named him a monster. That tells one story. There is no other story it can tell. She handed me the blame for her death with her last breath. I've decided it wasn't cruelty. I think she simply couldn't imagine a world where I wasn't punished for being loved by her. She'd believed her whole life that love ends in abandonment, and in the end she made it true. She made me the monster so the story would finally make sense to her. I am crying. Why didn't you tell anyone? The letters would clear you in an afternoon. And here he gives me the answer that tells me, finally, what kind of man I married. Because she begged me to tell them the truth, he says. And the whole truth is that she lied about the children for 9 years and lied to the council on the last night of her life and threatened her own death for a decade to keep me chained, and died doing it. If I tell that, yes, I save myself. But I take a beautiful, beloved, tragic woman who was sick and frightened and could not help what she became, and I turn her forever into a manipulator and a liar. I make everyone who grieved her feel like a fool. I burn the only thing she has left, which is the way people remember her. He shakes his head slowly. She couldn't help it. She was sick in a way no healer could touch. I couldn't save her while she was alive. The only thing I could still do for her was let her rest as the woman everyone loved, even if it cost me everything. There it is, the whole shape of him, and I understand now that I was wrong before, in the room, with my sad little theory. He is not still married to her ghost. He is doing something harder and lonelier than love. He is being merciful to someone who is never merciful to him. There's more, I say softly, because I have learned to hear the thing under the thing. Isn't there something you're not saying? He looks at me for a long moment, and then in a voice I have not heard from him, low and stripped bare. If they read the letters, they don't only see her clearly, they see me clearly. They see a man who spent 12 years being slowly destroyed and called it devotion, who couldn't see what was in front of him until it was on the balcony. I let them call me a murderer, Arya, because a murderer is at least a man who did something. The truth makes me a fool who did nothing while his whole life was taken apart, and was proud of his patience the entire time. His voice cracks. I would rather be hated than pitied. That is the worst of me. That is the part I have never told a living soul. He had just handed me every reason to think less of him. I kept waiting to. I could not understand why the wanting to stay only got stronger. And that is the moment I stop loving the idea of him and start loving the man. Because he has just shown me the ugliest thing in himself, the small, inhuman, and unflattering thing, and he did it knowing I could leave. He has handed me the knife, the same way he handed it to a kingdom 3 years ago, because some part of him has already decided I will use it.
I told her the worst of it, not the noble part. The noble part is easy. The noble part makes me look like a man protecting a tragic woman. I told her the small part, the vanity, the cowardice, the fool who would rather be hated than pitied. I told her because I am tired, and because she was crying for me and not at me, and because for one mad moment I wanted to be known all the way to the bottom by one person before I died unknown by everyone else, and now she knows. And now she will leave. They always leave, and the ones who don't leave because they're afraid will leave because they're disappointed. And disappointment is just fear that has finally seen clearly. She did not leave that night. But 3 days later she told me she was going home to settle matters with her father. I helped her into the carriage. I arranged the blanket over her knees against the cold. I said, "Thank you, Arya, for everything." As if she were already gone, because she was. They always are a little before they go. I did not ask her to stay. I want to write down why, so that the part of me that will spend tonight in the locked room screaming silently understands the part of me that let her go without a word. Arya, I have started this letter 11 times. I will not send any of them. I am writing it the way I talk to the room, to say a thing aloud where no one can use it against me. I wanted to ask you to stay. The words were in my mouth when I put the blanket over your knees. Stay. 2 letters more than your name, and I could not say either set. Here is why. I have only ever loved one way, and it was the wrong way. I held on. I held on so hard that I crushed the thing I was holding. I made my wanting into a cage and called it devotion, and I was proud of the bars. If I ask you to stay, I will be doing it again. I will be reaching for you the way I reached for her on the balcony, to pull you back from the edge of leaving. And I have learned what happens when I reach for someone who is already going. The stone gives way. They fall anyway. And my hand is on them when they do, so the world is right to blame me. If I love you, and I do, I am writing it once, here, where it can do no harm, then I cannot ask you to stay. Asking is the old way. Asking is the cage. The only love I have left that is worth anything is the kind that opens the door and stands back from it. And I broke even that, once. Those 3 cold days when I felt you turn from me and could not wait for the rest of it to come. I set a letter on the desk and a carriage at the door, and told myself I was handing you your freedom. I was not. I was trying to end it first, so that the leaving would at least be a thing I had done, and not a thing done to me. That is not an open door. It is the same cage, only I had crawled inside it myself and was trying to lock you out. It was the most cowardly hour I have spent in 3 years of them, and you never even knew it had a name. I am sorry for it. I will not say so aloud, because saying sorry asks to be forgiven, and I have promised to stop asking you for anything at all. So I opened every door, the forgiven debt, the carriage, the truth, which I handed you knowing you could ruin me with it. I have spent these weeks making sure you knew you were free, because a woman who has been spent her whole life like a coin should get to find out, once, that she cannot be spent, that she can only be chosen by herself, for herself. If you stay, it has to be because you turned around on that mountain road and could not bear the distance. It cannot be because I called you back. A called back thing is not a choice. It is just an echo of my voice. I think you are not coming back. I am a grey man in a grey house under a cloud the size of a kingdom, and you are the first warm thing that has happened to me in 3 years. And warm things move on. That is their nature. That is why they are warm. But I find I cannot make the room as cold as it was before you came. I lit the library lamp again tonight. There is no one to read by it. I lit it anyway. If you ever read this, you will already know everything it says, because you notice everything. You will have known before I did. Stay. I am not asking. Kaylin.
Chapter 7. Here is what I learned in 31 years about being useful instead of being chosen. When you are useful, people are glad to have you. They tell you they'd be lost without you, and they mean it, and you mistake it for love because from the inside it looks almost exactly the same, and because being needed is so much easier to come by than being wanted. But useful is what you are valued for until the task is done or someone more useful comes along. I have spent my whole life being the solution to other people's problems, and not one of them ever, once, looked at me and decided, without needing anything from me, that I was worth a small kindness done in secret. Kaylin moved the chair. I keep coming back to it, in my father's house, surrounded by my sister's noise and my father's relief that I've come to take the accounts off his hands again. The chair, the lamp, the folktales in the good light corner, the coat laid over me in the night while he sat cold by the fire so I would stay warm. He never told me about a single one. He did them in the dark and asked for nothing, not even thanks, because noticing what a person needs and quietly giving it is the only language of love he has left after the other one was taken from him and used as a weapon. That is not a man who throws women off towers. That is a man who decided all the way down that he does not deserve to be loved, and who loves anyway, helplessly, with his hands because he cannot stop himself, the way the roses grow back even after they've been cut to the ground. And I realized, standing in my father's hallway with my old useful life closing around me like a coat I've outgrown, that I have a choice to make, the first real choice of my whole life. Not a duty, not a solution, a choice. Mine. I can stay here, where I'm needed, where it's safe and warm and known, and spend the rest of my days being useful and unchosen, and no one will ever break my heart because no one will ever risk holding it. Or I can go back up the mountain to a gray castle and a man the whole world hates, who will never ask me to stay because he cannot survive being left one more time. And I can choose him, out loud, to his face, not for duty which is discharged, not for the debt which is forgiven, not for fate or a bond or anything that would take the choosing out of my own 2 hands, because that, I understand now, is the only thing that could heal a wound like his. Not pity, not belief in his innocence. Anyone clever might come to believe that. What he needs is for one person to know exactly who he is, all the way to the ugly bottom of him, the vanity and the cowardice and the years of being a fool, to know all of it, and to stay anyway. To stay not because he's good, though he is, and not because he's innocent, though he is, but because he is chosen. I find my father going over the accounts, frowning at the spring figures the way Kaylin frowned at the roses. I'm leaving in the morning, I tell him, going back. Back? But you've only just, and these accounts are a disaster. Who's going to? You'll manage, I tell him. You've always said I manage everything, so now you'll learn how. It's not as hard as I've let you believe. It is the most useful thing I have ever said to him, and I intend it to be the last useful thing I do for anyone for a long time. Chapter 8. I do not send word that I am coming. I want to see his face before he has time to arrange it into something polite and braced. The carriage climbs the mountain road in the gray light before dawn. I have not slept. My heart is doing something violent and unfamiliar, because I have spent my whole life being certain of things, and I have never been less certain of anything than how he will look at me when I walk back through that gate. He has 3 years of evidence that everyone leaves, and 1 morning of me leaving to add to the pile. I am about to ask him to put down the only thing he has been sure of since before I met him. Highmore rises out of the mist. The gardens are less overgrown than the day I came, the paths showing themselves again, the beds taking shape. He has been working on the roses. Even with me gone, even with no reason to think I'd ever see them. Mara meets me at the gate. She says nothing about where I have been, or why I have come back at dawn with no word sent ahead. But her hand closes hard around my arm as I pass, just once, and when I look at her, the iron has gone out of her face and there is water standing in the old woman's eyes that she is far too proud to let fall. He's in the garden, she says, rough. He's always in the garden now. And then lower, as though the words cost her something to spend. I'd stopped letting myself hope anyone would come back to this house. Go on, my lady, go on, before I lose my nerve about it for the both of us. I understand, walking past her, that she gave this place up for lost a long time ago, and kept her head down with the rest of them because hoping had only ever cost her. And that my coming back up the mountain has asked the hardest thing of her of all, which is to believe in it again. I find him there, in the garden, in the thin gold of the new dawn, on his knees in the dark earth among his mother's roses, exactly where I first saw him, as if no time has passed at all. He hears the gravel shift under my feet and goes still. He does not turn around. I watch the braced set of his shoulders, and I understand that he believes I've come to collect something I forgot, or to make a clean ending. He is already, in the half-second before he's seen my face, watching me leave again. You came back, he says, to the roses. Not to me. His voice scraped empty. I came back. Did you forget something? This is the moment, the only one that has ever mattered in my whole careful, useful life. Yes, I say. I forgot to tell you something, and it couldn't be said to your shoulder, so I came all the way back to say it to your face, because you of all people deserve to have it said to your face. My hands are shaking. I am not here for the debt. You forgave it before I arrived. I am not here because my father needs me. He'll manage. For the first time in my whole life, no living person needs me for anything, and there is nothing forcing my hand, and I have chosen, freely, with my own 2 hands, to be here. With you. I rode through the night to do it. He turns around, slowly, and his face is doing something I have never seen it do. It is breaking open. You don't have to, he says, his voice wrecked. Arya, you've read the letters. You know everything now. You know I'd never hold you, never chain you, never do to you any part of what was done to me. You can go anywhere, have any life. I'll help you have it. You don't have to. I know I don't have to, I say. That is the whole point. Don't you see? I know I can go anywhere. I know no one will stop me, least of all you. You've spent every day making certain I knew the door was open. Every door. The carriage and the forgiven debt and the truth you handed me like a knife. You did everything a man could do to make sure I knew I was free to leave, and I'm standing in your garden in the cold telling you that out of everywhere I could go, I choose this. I choose you. Not because anyone made me, because I want to. Hear it. I am not staying because I have to. I am staying because I looked at every open door you left me and I am closing them. From the inside. Myself. He is on his feet now. He has not moved toward me. I think he cannot. The thing he has believed all the way down for so many years that nobody stays is at war with what he is hearing, and he does not know how to lay down the armor he's forgotten isn't his skin. So I do it for him. I cross the garden. I close the distance he cannot close, the way he spent these weeks quietly closing every small distance for me. I take his dirt-stained hands in both of mine. I noticed the chair, I say. You moved it, and the library. You opened it and lit the lamp and said nothing. And the sugar bowl, and the coat you put over me during the storm, while you sat cold by the fire all night. You thought I was asleep. I wasn't. I see everything, Kaylin. It's the one thing I've always been good at. And what I saw is that the most hated man in 3 kingdoms spent every day quietly taking care of a woman who'd been handed to him like a coin, and never once asked for anything back. Not even for me to stay. My eyes are streaming. I let them. There's a letter on your desk you never sent. I didn't read it. I didn't have to. I already know what it says because I know you. It says stay and it says you'd never ask, so I'm answering the question you were too good to ask out loud. Yes, I'm staying, by choice. Mine. And Kaylin. The Widowmaker, the monster of the North, the man who let an entire world hate him rather than be pitied. He makes a sound I have never heard a person make, like something deep giving way, like old stone finally letting go. Nobody stays, he says, and it is entirely a question. After 3 years, after a whole life, in the smallest and bravest voice I have ever heard, he is daring to ask me to prove him wrong. I know, I say. I'm going to anyway. He pulls me against him, but not the way she held him. I know it without being told, not grasping and frightened. He holds me the way you hold something you've just decided against all the evidence of your life, to stop being afraid of losing. His face goes into my hair. He is shaking, and after a moment I realize he is weeping, silently, without a sound, the way a man weeps who taught himself long ago that tears were one more thing that could be used against him. I hold him. I have spent my whole life holding people up. This is the first time it has ever felt like being held back. I'll tell them, he says at last, against my hair. The truth. All of it. If you're staying, I won't have you live one more day in the shadow of a lie this size. I'll ride to the capital myself and... No, I say. He pulls back to look at me, and for once he does not yield. There is something fierce in his face I have not seen before. Arya, you don't understand what you're agreeing to. 3 years I could carry it because there was only me to carry it. But you. Every door you walk through in this kingdom, every market, every council hall, they'll whisper, there goes the murderer's wife. The woman who married the man who killed his Luna. I can let them think that of me. I have made my peace with it. I cannot make my peace with them thinking it of you. His hands tighten on my arms. Let me clear it, not for my sake. God knows I stopped caring about my own name years ago. For yours. I have spent my whole life unable to protect the people I love. Let me protect you from this one thing. Let me give you a clean name to wear. It is the only wedding gift I have left to give. And there it is. The old instinct. The reaching hand. The man who would burn the last thing he is protecting if it might shield someone he loves. It would be so easy to let him. To be the wronged but vindicated wife. To walk into any room in 3 kingdoms with my head up. But I have learned to hear the thing under the thing, and the thing under this is that he is doing it again. Reaching for the person at the edge, trying to pull them to safety, certain that if he just gives enough he can keep them. And I will not let his love for me cost him the last mercy he has. No, I say again, gentler now, and I take his face in my hands so he cannot look away. You let her rest as the woman everyone loved because it was the last kind thing you could do for someone who couldn't help what fear made of her. And you let them call you a murderer instead of a fool because being pitied was the one thing you couldn't bear. Both of those things are true, and both of them are yours, and I will not be the reason you undo either. A clean name is no gift to me if you have to set fire to your own mercy to give it. I don't want a clean name. I want you exactly as you are, secrets and all. Let her keep being their saint. Let them keep being wrong about you. The world's verdict was never the one that mattered. I press my hand flat to his chest, over the heart that has carried all of this alone. I know the truth. You know it. The 2 of us, in this house, on this mountain. That's the only court whose verdict I ever cared about. Let it be enough that the one person you finally told everything is the one person who chose to stay knowing it. He looks at me a long, long moment. The dawn is full now, gold pouring over the shoulder of the mountain, catching in the roses all around us. The roses he refused to let die, that were bare thorns the morning I came and are putting out new red shoots even now at the very end of the season, in the cold, because he would not stop tending them. "I'm not very good at this," he says, unsteady. "Bringing things back. I told you the first day, most things I try to bring back." "I remember exactly what you said," I tell him. "Word for word, I remember everything. I think I was wrong about the roses." He looks down at me, and for the first time since I've known him, there is something in his face that is not grief, and is not penance, and is not the braced sorrow of a man expecting to be left. It is hope, which is harder and braver than either, because hope can be disappointed, and he has decided to risk it anyway. "And maybe," he says, "I was wrong about some other things too." "You were wrong about exactly one thing," I say. "Nobody stays. You built your whole self around it, and you were wrong." And there in the garden, in the gold light, surrounded by the flowers he refused to let die, I reach up and kiss the man I have chosen. Freely, with my own two hands, with full knowledge of everything, for no reason in the world except that I want to. Chapter 9. One evening near the end of that first true year, the first year of my whole life I'd call entirely my own, entirely chosen, I find him at the locked door with a small tool in his hand, working the brass lock loose from the old wood, not breaking it, easing it free, gently, the way you ease a splint off a bone that has finally, quietly, knit itself back together while you weren't watching. "It's time," he says, when he sees me. He doesn't startle. "She can rest now. I think she's been ready a while. I think I was the one who wasn't." He sets the lock on the windowsill where the evening light catches it, and so can I. Rest. I'd forgotten it was allowed. We don't make it a tomb. We open the windows that have been shut for 3 years. We take down the crowding pictures, all but one small one, because she was real and she was loved and she should not be erased, only laid down gently. The last letter we burn together, in the grate, because some truths cost more to keep than to let go, and because the only two people who ever needed to know it already do. In time, though, that is a different story, and a happier one. The room becomes a nursery. The healer who told Lysandra the truth so long ago turns out to have been only half right, in the way the worst news is so often only half true, believed completely because despair is easier to carry when it's certain. Hope is harder. Hope you have to choose every day the way you choose a person. We chose it. It came, not as a miracle. There were years and grief and a great deal of choosing on the hard mornings. But it came. That is all later, though. For now there is only this, and this is enough, this is everything. A garden coming back to life around us, red shoots against the dark canes, and two people who each spent their whole lives certain they were impossible to love, standing together in the gold light of an early morning, having finally, completely, against every expectation either of them ever held, proven each other wrong. He chose every single day to open the door and stand back from it. I chose, on one cold, bright morning, of my own free will and for no reason but that I wanted to walk through it and stay. And in the end, when all the other secrets had been laid down to rest, that was the only truth